Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature video number 149, the big 150 coming up now. Shaman, Saifa, and Sufi. It's actually a study of Malaysian magic, which I believe they're having an election now as we speak, so it's sort of interesting. I thought an interesting synchronicity because I didn't have any clue that that was going on when I started editing it a few weeks ago. And it's an interesting work. Link is always in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books, blogs, Blogspot, and WordPress. If you're into the academic side, especially in that era of more early academic literature, sort of the colonial period, now there's a lot there, several dozen other titles. This work is interesting. It speaks supposedly of the evolution of Malay magic. But it sort of forsakes that and looks more at the connection between different types of invocations, ritualism, holidays, birth, death, marriage, betrothal, things of that nature. Sort of the practices around them and how they stem in part from Islam, mystic Islam, in part from Hinduism in many cases, or Buddhism, and in part from other more maybe pagan aspects of localized tribalism. And it specifically focuses on the northwestern states within Malaysia for the most part. So it's an interesting work. It's 135 pages in length, so it's relatively in-depth. And some of it is a little bit dense, but it is an anthropological work at the same time that it is technically, you could use it as a hands-on occult guide. It contains literal invocations, some dozens of them, that surround some of these points in people's lives, birth, the death again, as I said, in marriage. And it speaks of these different sort of backgrounds. It also speaks of influence, especially. The most interesting part is really the Islamic influence. Because mystic Islam is something that, a lot of texts sort of gloss over. If they're within that region of the world, they're going to focus more on the authentically Eastern side of the tribalism or the Hindu or Buddhist paths. Now, that's what I've noticed, at least from that period. There was less of it seemed, an interest in the mystic side of Islam in some of these cultures. But there actually is. There are technically Islamic occultists. I thought that the funniest spell that it contains is a little invocation, almost a miniaturized sort of Greek-style invocation. I've spoken before of the practice within sort of the Greek pagan period. You'd say, I have a problem. What is my problem? I have no problem. And you could adapt that to whatever the problem was. The idea is that by repeating that, you tricked your mind into sort of, in a subconscious sense, alleviating your problem, like a headache or a flu or something, and then you'd feel better. It seems that they took the basic idea of basically there is one God, his name is Allah, and sort of the Islamic prayer, and they converted it to I am God, essentially, in order to empower the self, in a strictly psychological method. And it's a very interesting, and I guess it was considered blasphemy, taboo, and so you'd be killed or at least thrown in jail if you did that, and people could prove that you did. But it's very interesting. We do have to understand that some of the tales within here, some of the anecdotes, may not be 100% accurate as described, however. We have to understand that in this earlier period of anthropology, in some cases there was a tendency to overlook the possibility that what you were actually hearing from someone reported as an anecdote. This is a spell that we use for some reason. Well, how do you know that the whole community uses that? It could be that just a very small number of people do, and so it's being reported as though it was widespread. That does need to be kept in mind. But as far as its treatment of sort of the mystic Islamic path, the mysticism of Hinduism, and its overlap in the colonial period, even with a little bit of Christendom. It's a very, very interesting work. Very in-depth, comes highly recommended. Again, link in the description of my edition on Amazon, second and third links to my books, blogs. If you want other academic works, there's plenty there. And there are other categories, too, if you're interested in these sorts of things. That's about all. Peace out.